first shot shattered the window above the 8-burner stove. Crystal rained into the veal demi-glace, and Chef Lena Wright, former Army cook, current private chef to one of Seoul's most reclusive billionaires, did not scream. She calculated. 3 men armed moving through her kitchen. Her employer, Jin-ho, was in the dining room with his family, utterly unaware. Her only weapons were precision German steel and the memory of a drill sergeant shouting, "Adapt or die." The billion-won dinner was over. The fight for their lives had just begun. This is the story of how a private chef earning $100,000 a year became the sole protector of the Kang family fortune. Lena Wright was hired to craft menus of silent discretion for Jin-ho Kang, a tech billionaire shrouded in litigation and old rivalries. Her job was to be invisible, to hear nothing. But in that kitchen, as 3 armed men breached the one-door security never fully monitored, she faced an impossible choice: follow her contract and hide, or use every forgotten skill from her past to defend a man who didn't even know her last name. Lena Wright arrived in Seoul 6 months earlier, a woman running towards a version of peace she'd spent a decade at war trying to imagine. She left the army after 8 years, not because she was broken, but because she was tired of feeding young soldiers who saw the kitchen as a break from the field. She wanted to cook for people who appreciated the silence between bites. Her recruitment file, handled by a discreet agency in London, listed her final rank as staff sergeant, her specialty as high-pressure culinary operations in secure environments, and her reason for leaving as a single word: repurpose. The Kang compound was not a home. It was a fortress disguised as a modernist museum, perched on a secluded hill in Seongbuk-dong, one of Seoul's most exclusive enclaves. The main residence was all cantilevered concrete and floor-to-ceiling glass, a statement of immense wealth and profound vulnerability. Jin-ho Kang, 42, was the reclusive heir and CEO of Koryo Cyber Systems, a company that built encrypted networks for governments and corporations. His fortune was estimated at $4.2 billion. His public persona was a black hole. No interviews, no social media, a single grainy photo from a shareholder meeting. His private reality, as Lena would learn, was a maze of paranoia and meticulous control. Her interview was conducted by his assistant, a severe woman named Min-jae, in a sterile anteroom. Lena never saw him. The questions were about knife skills, sourcing Kobe beef, allergies, and then, abruptly, about composure. "Have you ever worked in an environment where you might hear sensitive discussions?" Min-jae asked, her eyes unblinking. "In the army, ma'am," Lena replied, her voice flat. "Our kitchen was next to the comms tent. I learned to hear nothing but the sound of my own knife." She got the job. The staff were ghosts: a head of security named Park who moved like liquid shadow, 2 silent housemen, a groundskeeper who never made eye contact, and Min-jae, the gatekeeper. Lena's domain was the kitchen, a temple of stainless steel and marble that cost more than her lifetime earnings. Her contract, 27 pages long, had entire sections on confidentiality, non-disclosure, and a clause that made her liable for termination without recourse if she ever spoke to the press or acknowledged her employer's name in public. She was to prepare 2 meals a day, breakfast and dinner, leave them in the pass-through, and clean the kitchen to a forensic standard. She was not to initiate conversation. She was, for all intents and purposes, a highly paid appliance. For the first month, she saw Jin-ho Kang only once from a distance. He was tall, with the perfectly groomed hair from the thumbnail, moving through the garden at dusk like a man checking the perimeter of his own prison. He looked younger than 42 and older at the same time. His eyes, even from 30 yards away, scanned, calculated, never rested. The change happened because of a duck. Lena had prepared canard à l'orange, a technically perfect, lifeless thing. She placed it in the pass-through at 7 p.m. sharp. At 7:10, Min-jae appeared at the kitchen door, her face pinched. "The principal wishes to see you." Jin-ho Kang was seated at the dining table, the duck untouched before him. The room was cold, lit by a single pendant light. He did not look up as she entered. "This is French," he said, his English flawless, accentless. "Yes, sir, Canarda et l'orange." "I did not ask for French. The menu said duck. The classical preparation for—" "I am aware of the classical preparation." He finally looked at her. His gaze was not angry. It was exhausted. "This is food that is trying to be important. I spend 16 hours a day dealing with things that are too important. I do not want to negotiate with my dinner." Lena felt a familiar heat rise in her cheeks, not embarrassment, but the frustration of a craftsman being misunderstood. "What would you prefer it to be, sir?" "I don't know, not this." The next night she made Korean braised duck, *oritang*. Rich, spicy, comforting, she placed it in the pass-through. An hour later the plate was returned clean, no message. The following week he requested a simple Western breakfast. She made buttermilk pancakes, thick-cut maple bacon, scrambled eggs with chives. The plate came back with a single note in precise handwriting. "Too simple, try again." It was a maddening, silent dialogue. He was testing her, not just her skill, but her resilience, her ability to decode an unspoken need. She realized he wasn't being a difficult billionaire. He was a man so surrounded by yes men and threat assessments that he had forgotten how to ask for what he wanted. Food was his only safe medium for a conversation. Then the first hint of the outside world piercing the bubble. It was a Tuesday evening. Lena was finishing a batch of kimchi, the pungent smell filling the kitchen. From the adjoining study, through the slightly ajar door, she heard Jinho's voice, low and sharp. "The board is not the issue, Minjai. It's the vote next month. If the merger fails, the Yungan Group loses face, and Chairman Jian does not lose face. He creates consequences." A pause, Minjai's murmur. "Increased patrols are a visible weakness," Jinho snapped. "It tells them we're expecting something. The flaw is never the wall, it's the door you forget to check." Lena's hands stilled in the chili paste. "The door you forget to check." She looked instinctively at the kitchen's service entrance, a heavy steel door leading to the delivery courtyard. It had a biometric lock, but she'd noticed the installers last week. The keypad was new. The scanner sometimes blinked red twice before green. She began to notice other things. The silent housemen were not just staff. They were ex-special forces, their builds unmistakable. Head of Security Park carried himself with the coiled tension of a man constantly running scenarios. The compound wasn't just secure. It was under siege mentality. The turning point came 4 months in. Jinho had a rare business dinner at the residence. 3 Japanese executives from a potential partner firm. The meal was to be a showpiece, 12 courses, a fusion of Korean and kaiseki traditions. Lena worked for 2 days straight. During the main course, grilled eel with a gochujang glaze, she heard raised voices from the dining room, then a crash of glass. She peered through the service window. One of the executives, a man with a gray beard, was on his feet, face purple. "This is not a negotiation, Kang-san. This is an ultimatum. Align with us, or Yungan will bury you and take the pieces." Jinho sat perfectly still at the head of the table. "You are in my home," he said, his voice so quiet it cut through the rage. "You will not raise your voice. You will sit down, or my security will remove you. The choice is yours." The man sat. The dinner ended in frozen silence. 20 minutes after the guests left in a black sedan, Minjai came to the kitchen. "The principal will take his coffee in the study. Bring it yourself." This was unprecedented. Lena prepared a pour-over, the way he liked it. The study was a room of shadows and screens, live feeds of every perimeter fence blinking on a wall. Jinho stood by the window, his back to her. "You heard," he said, not a question. "I heard a disagreement, sir." He turned. He looked utterly drained. "That was Chairman Jian's right hand, the Yungan Group. They are old money, old methods. They believe my company is rightfully theirs. The merger is a polite word for a hostile takeover. If the shareholder vote fails, they will pursue other means. He took the coffee from her tray. His hand, she saw, had a faint tremor. Thank you for the meal. It was the only competent part of the evening. Sir, the door. He paused. What door? The new lock on the kitchen service entrance. It hesitates. If the system is stressed, or if someone bypasses the main gate security, it might be the door they forget to check. But it's also the one a desperate person might remember. He stared at her for a long moment, his eyes searching her face not as an employer, but as a tactician assessing an unexpected asset. You notice things. It was my job to notice things, before it was my job to cook. He gave a single, slow nod. Noted. Nothing changed outwardly. But the next day, a technician came and replaced the entire locking mechanism on the service door. And Jin-Ho Kang began taking his meals not in the dining room, but at the kitchen island in silence, watching her work. The fragile normalcy held for 6 more weeks. Lena learned his rhythms, his slight preference for spicy food when he was stressed, the way he never talked about his family, the single photograph on his study desk of an older couple, his parents, she assumed, taken in what looked like the 1980s. Then the night of the shareholder vote. The tension in the compound was a physical thing. Security patrols doubled. Park was a constant, grim presence on the monitors. Jin-Ho had sequestered himself in his study all afternoon. Lena prepared a simple meal of bibimbap, something comforting. At 7 p.m., she brought it to the study door. Minjai intercepted her, phone pressed to her ear, face ashen. Not now, she hissed. From inside the room, Lena heard Jin-Ho's voice, roaring with a fury she'd never imagined he possessed. They bought the proxy votes. How was this not anticipated? This is a total systemic failure. The vote had failed. Yungen had won. Lena returned to the kitchen, her own heart pounding. The stakes were no longer abstract. She felt it in the air. She was cleaning her knives when the external lights across the courtyard suddenly died, plunging the kitchen into darkness save for the glow of the oven hood. A second later, the emergency lights flickered on, casting long skeletal shadows. Then a soft, metallic asterisk scrunch from the direction of the service door. Not the alarm, the sound of the lock's housing being forced. Lena's training bypassed her fear. Her hand closed around the handle of her heaviest chef's knife, a 9-inch Wusthof steel she kept razor-sharp. She moved silently to the side of the door, pressing her back against the cold stainless steel fridge. The door's keypad beeped once in error, then a muffled curse, a final, decisive thud. The steel door swung inward, and the first shot shattered the window above the 8-burner stove. Time did not slow down. It fractured into a series of absolute technical decisions. The shot was high and wide, a suppression round to shatter nerves and glass. Lena, already pressed against the fridge, was out of the direct line of fire. The first man through the door was bulky, dressed in black tactical gear, a compact submachine gun raised. He scanned left, then right, his barrel following his eyes. Lena moved on the turn. As his head swiveled past her position, she lunged, not with a slash but a brutal forward thrust. The heavy chef's knife, designed to disjoint beef carcasses, punched through the tactical vest's side panel, finding the gap below the armpit. The man grunted, a sound of pure surprise. She yanked the knife free as he staggered, his weapon clattering to the marble floor. Second man was already in the doorway. He saw his partner falling and fired a wild burst. Bullets chewed into the stainless steel oven facade. Lena dropped, rolled behind the central island, the giant butcher block thudding with impacts. She came up on the other side, her hand closing not on another knife, but on a cast-iron skillet hanging from a rack. The second assassin, advancing around the island, never saw it coming. The 12-inch pan connected with his temple with a wet, metallic crunch. He collapsed like a dropped marionette. The third man hung back in the doorway, smarter, covering the hall. He didn't enter the kill zone. He aimed at the island, waiting for her to move. Lena crouched, breathing ragged. two down, one sealing the exit. Her mind raced through the kitchen's geometry. The pass-through to the dining room was to her left, a swinging door. The study where Jinho was lay beyond that. Then from the depths of the house came the muffled staccato pop of more gunfire. Not in the kitchen. In the main hall. Security was engaged. The third man in the doorway glanced over his shoulder, distracted. It was all she needed. She didn't stand. She shoved the entire island, 1,000 pounds of marble and wood, with her legs and back. It screeched across the floor, slamming into the doorway, pinning the third man's leg and throwing off his aim. His shot went wide, embedding in the ceiling. Before he could recover, Lena was on him. She didn't have the knife. She'd left it in the first man. She used the edge of her hand, a precise strike to the throat her drill sergeant had called a vocal cord negotiation. He gagged, eyes bulging, and she finished it with a knee to the sternum, driving the air from his lungs. He slid down the wall, unconscious. Silence then, broken only by the distant firefight and the drip of the broken faucet shot clean off. The kitchen smelled of cordite, blood, and burnt demi-glace. 3 men, 1 minute, maybe less. Lena's hands were steady. A terrifying, surgical calm held her. She picked up the submachine gun from the first man, checked the magazine with automatic fingers, and moved to the pass-through door. She listened. Shouts in Korean. More gunfire, then a sudden, heavy silence. She pushed the door open an inch. The dining room was empty. The hall beyond was a scene of carnage. One of the silent housemen lay motionless near the grand staircase. Security Chief Park was crouched behind a shattered decorative pillar, his arm bleeding, firing down the main corridor towards the shattered front entrance. And Jinho Kang stood frozen in the study doorway, exactly as the thumbnail promised. His impeccable black suit was untouched. His face was a mask of utter shock, his eyes wide, fixed on her. He was looking not at the gun in her hand, but at her face, at the white chef's coat spattered with a dark, viscous mix that could have been sauce or blood. In that elongated second, the entire fiction of their relationship, employer and employee, principal and appliance, shattered. Park shouted something. Jinho didn't move. Lena broke the stare, moving to Park's position with a low, tactical crouch she hadn't used in years. Status. Park, bleeding, looked at her with a confusion that mirrored his boss. 2 breached the front. Neutralized. Communications are jammed. No external alarm was triggered. This was an inside job. They knew the blind spots. The word hung in the air. Inside. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. The police. An ambulance. The compound's internal security lights blazed to life, turning night into a stark blue day. The next 6 hours were a blur of chaos contained within cold procedural walls. Seoul Metropolitan Police swarmed the property. Forensics teams in white suits moved through the kitchen, photographing the bodies, the weapons, the skillet. Lena was sequestered in a sitting room with a female detective who spoke careful English. She gave her statement 3 times. Former U.S. Army, Staff Sergeant, culinary specialist, acted in self-defense and defense of the principal. She described the faulty lock. She did not mention Jinho's business troubles. Through the window, she saw Jinho and Park speaking with a senior police official in the garden. Jinho's shock had been replaced by a cold, focused anger. He gestured sharply towards the main gate, then towards the kitchen wing. The official nodded, taking notes. It was Min Jai who found her later as dawn bleached the sky. The assistant's severe composure was cracked, dark circles under her eyes. The principal wishes to see you in his study. Now. The study felt different. The live security feeds were now a mosaic of police cars and tape. Jinho stood by the desk, the photograph of his parents in his hands. He didn't look up as she entered. The police believe it was a botched robbery by a criminal gang, he said, his voice flat. They will say so at a press conference this afternoon. Lena waited. He finally looked at her. It was not a robbery. I know. The men were professionals, ex-military. Their weapons were untraceable, purchased on the Balkan black market. Their jamming equipment was military grade. This was not a gang. This was an assassination attempt, and you stopped it. He placed the photograph down carefully. Why? The question was how, it was why. They were in my kitchen, Lena said simply. A faint, almost imperceptible flicker at the corner of his mouth. Not a smile. An acknowledgement. Park tells me you used a knife and a frying pan. They were the tools at hand. You could have hidden. The pantry is a reinforced safe room. You could have followed protocol, saved yourself, and let them pass. They were not there for you. Lena met his gaze. You were in the house. Silence stretched between them, thick with everything unsaid. The silent meals, the decoded requests, the shared understanding of pressure. I have reviewed your contract, he said, shifting to a tone of cold business. The confidentiality clause is now amended. You will speak of this to no one ever. In return, your annual salary is doubled. A discretionary bonus of $500,000 will be deposited in an account of your choosing. You will also receive a new title, Director of Household Security and Provision. Lena blinked. I'm a chef. You are a chef who neutralized 3 armed infiltrators in 54 seconds. I am a man who has just learned his security apparatus has a cancer within it. I need someone inside these walls whose loyalty is demonstrated, not purchased. The pivot was complete. She was no longer just staff. She was a witness, an asset, and now a shield. What about the police story? She asked. It will hold for the public, but the internal investigation begins now. Park is leading it. You will assist him. You have an eye for the door everyone forgets to check. The following days were a tense, silent war within the fortress. The compound was locked down. Every staff member was revetted. Park, his arm in a sling, worked with a grim fury. The breach was traced to a junior security technician who had been paid $200 million to disable the external alarms and override the kitchen door's new lock. He was found in his apartment, an apparent suicide, a single gunshot wound to the head. The money trail led to a shell corporation in the British Virgin Islands, a dead end. But Lena, working in the kitchen that was now also a crime scene and a command center, began to see patterns in the chaos. The attackers hadn't just come for Jinho. They had come through the kitchen. The most direct route to the study was through the main hall. The kitchen was a detour, unless... She pulled the blueprints up on a tablet. The kitchen service entrance led to the delivery courtyard, which had a gate to a service road. That road was less monitored. It was an exit route. They weren't just coming to kill. They were coming to extract. She took her theory to Park. They weren't here to assassinate him in the study. They were here to take him. A kidnapping. The firefight at the front was a diversion. The real team was coming in through the back to snatch him and leave the same way. Park stared at the blueprint, then at her. A kidnapping makes no sense. Jungan wants the company. With him dead, the board collapses. The merger is easy. With him kidnapped, it's messy, uncertain. Unless they needed something from him first, a voice said from the doorway. Jinho stood there holding a sleek silver laptop. Access codes, biometric signatures, the final algorithmic keys to Koryo Cyber's master encryption vault. The board can't give them that. Only I can. Dead, I'm a martyr. Alive and in their custody, I am a key they can break. The stakes had just escalated again. This wasn't corporate warfare. It was a digital heist of unimaginable scale. There is something else, Jinho said, his face pale. The technician who betrayed us, his payment. The shell company that paid him, I recognize the pattern of its creation. It's a method used by an operation my father warned me about. Not Jungan, something older. They call themselves the Jiayang, the Reapers. They are fixers, cleaners, corporate assassins of the highest order. They are not hired by companies. They are hired by families for dynastic disputes. He opened the laptop, revealing a scanned, grainy document from the 1990s. It was a threat assessment written in his father's hand. The Jiayang move when bloodlines are at war, when an heir is deemed unworthy, when a fortune must be redirected. Lena felt a chill. Who would deem you unworthy? Jinho's eyes went to the photograph on his desk. My father had a brother, my uncle Seung Hyun. They had a falling out before I was born over the company's direction. My father believed in building secure systems. My uncle believed in selling access to them. He was cast out, disinherited. He vowed my father's line would lose everything. We believed he died in America years ago. You think he's alive? I think the Jiayang do not resurrect ghosts for no reason. He closed the laptop. The shareholder vote was not the end game. It was the first move. Discredit my leadership, weaken my position. Then remove me not through a boardroom but through a black bag. Install a puppet, perhaps a cousin I've never met, perhaps my uncle himself, who would hand the company's vaults over to Yungan as part of the settlement. A clean, silent transfer of power. And you? He looked at her, and for the first time she saw something like fear in his eyes. You are not part of their calculation. You are a variable they cannot code for, and now they know who you are. The implication landed like a physical blow. She was no longer just a protector. She was a target. Later that night, unable to sleep, Lena walked the quiet halls. She found herself outside Jinho's private quarters. The door was ajar. Inside, he was not sleeping either. He stood at his window, looking out at the city lights. You should rest, she said softly from the doorway. He didn't turn. I keep replaying it. You in the doorway, the gun in your hand, you looked like you belonged there, more than I did. It was my kitchen, she repeated, the only truth she could offer. He finally turned. The distance between them, the professional chasm, felt paper-thin. When you took this job, you were looking for peace. I have given you only war. You didn't give it. It was already here. I just walked into the middle of it. He took a step towards her, then stopped. The Jiayang, they will come again. They are methodical. They study failure more than success. They have now studied you. Let them study, Lena said, the calm of the kitchen settling over her once more. I have more than knives and pans. A ghost of that almost smile returned. What do you have? I have the layout of this house. I have the schedule of every guard. I know what you eat when you're stressed. I know you pretend not to like sentimental things, but you keep that photograph where you can see it. I know the rhythm of this place. And now I know the enemy isn't just outside. The cancer park mentioned, you haven't cut it out yet. The technician was a symptom. The sickness is still here. He stared at her, a new realization dawning. She wasn't just a soldier or a chef. She was a strategist. She had seen the heart of it. The breach was internal, and until they found the core of the betrayal, they were just waiting for the next, smarter attack. Then we find it, Jinho said, his voice low, together. It was a pact sealed not with a handshake, but with a shared, silent understanding of the siege ahead. As Lena turned to leave, a soft chime came from the laptop on his desk, an encrypted alert. Jinho glanced at it, and his blood drained from his face. What is it? Lena asked. He looked up, his eyes hollow. A message from the Jiayang. They didn't send it to me. He turned the screen towards her. It was a single line of text, sent to a buried personal email address she had used only for her army pension. The message read, Staff Sergeant Wright, the skillet was inventive. The next visit will not be so domestic. The message was a declaration of war and a chilling proof of concept. They were not just outside the walls. They were in the wires, in the data, in the private spaces of a life she'd kept separate. The Jiayang had just told her they could reach anywhere. Lena's army email was a ghost from a past she'd sealed shut. Its compromise meant this was not a corporate intelligence grab. This was a full-spectrum profile. They knew her service history. They would know her weaknesses. Jinho's reaction was instantaneous and absolute. He physically destroyed the laptop with a single, violent slam against the edge of his desk. Nothing is secure. Nothing. He turned to her, his earlier fear now burned away by a white-hot rage. You will not leave this compound. Your role is now official. You are under my protection. I don't need protection, Lena said, her own voice low. I need a weapon and information. How did they get that email? The same way they bypassed my firewalls, found the technician, knew the kitchen door was the weak point. They have a source with intimate access, not just to my systems, to my life. He paced, a caged animal. Minjai has been with me for 10 years, Park for 8. The housemen were vetted by Park himself. The circle is impossibly small. Then the circle is wrong, Lena stated. Or your definition of intimate access is too narrow. She spent the next 48 hours in a self-imposed lockdown within the kitchen-turned command center. She ignored the new title, the doubled salary. She focused on the problem as a tactical puzzle. She requested, and after a tense argument with Park, received copies of all security logs, personnel files, and financial records for the inner circle for the past 5 years. Park viewed it as an affront. Jinho overruled him. Lena wasn't looking for a giant transfer of funds. She was looking for a pattern of life disruption, a divorce, a sick parent, a gambling debt suddenly paid off, a child's tuition mysteriously covered, the quiet leverages of espionage. Minjai's file was a study in sterile efficiency. No family, no debts, salary deposits consistent, no anomalies. Park was similar, though she noted a series of large, regular withdrawals labeled family support. When she asked Jinho, he shrugged. His sister is ill, I know about it. I have offered to cover the treatments. He refuses. He is proud. The housemen's files were clean. The groundskeeper, an old man who had worked for Jinho's father, was practically a ghost in the system. Frustrated, Lena expanded the search beyond the immediate staff. She looked at vendors, the wine supplier, the florist, the company that serviced the air filtration systems. And there, buried in an invoice from 6 months prior from Sungjin Advanced Climate Control, she found it. A line item for a full system diagnostic and sensor calibration, dated the week asterisk before the new kitchen lock was installed. The diagnostic required full, unsupervised access to the compound's internal network for 8 hours. She cross-referenced the company. It was a legitimate contractor, but the technician assigned to the job, a man named Lee, had no prior record with the company. His employee ID was valid, but his photo on the work order was grainy. She ran it through Jinho's facial recognition software, linked to the national ID database. There was no match. The man was a ghost. They weren't just planting a backdoor, she told Jinho and Park, pointing at the screen in the study. They were mapping the entire digital nervous system of this house. The alarm triggers, the camera blind spots, the schedule of patrols. This Lee walked through every room. He would have seen the kitchen. He would have seen the service door. This wasn't an inside job from a paid staffer. This was a long-term professional penetration. The technician you found dead. He was just the final piece, the one who flipped the switch. He was disposable. The real asset was the man who did the diagnostic. Park's face was stone. I approved that work order. Minjai processed it. The company was vetted. The company was real. The man was not. Lena zoomed in on the grainy photo. This is the Jiayang. They don't buy loyalty at the last minute. They build it layer by layer over years. They impersonate. They infiltrate. They become part of the scenery. The revelation changed the investigation. They weren't hunting a traitor. They were hunting a phantom. The sense of paranoia deepened, chilling the already cold air of the compound. Trust evaporated. Minjai and Park barely spoke. The housemen watched each other. Lena found herself analyzing every meal delivery, every package for signs of secondary surveillance. It was during this frost that Jinho's mother arrived. Yoonjae Kang was a small woman in her 70s, with a serene face and eyes that missed nothing. She lived in a quiet villa in Jeju, and her unannounced arrival in a black sedan sent a ripple of old-world authority through the compound. She had heard the police story of a robbery attempt. She did not believe it. Her reunion with her son was formal, a slight bow, a murmured greeting. But when she was introduced to Lena, the new director of security, her gaze lingered. "You are the chef," she said, not a question. Yes, ma'am. You were in the kitchen during the incident. I was. Yoonjae gave a slow, approving nod. A kitchen is the heart of a home. It is also its most vulnerable point, a wise place to defend. That evening, Yoonjae requested a private dinner with her son. Lena prepared it, a simple meal of grilled fish, doenjang jjigae, and an array of banchan. She served it herself in the small, rarely used family dining room. As she set the soup down, she heard Yoonjae's soft voice. The Jiayang have contacted you. Lena froze, Jinho stiffened. Mother, how could you? Do not insult me, Jinho. A robbery does not require the head of the National Intelligence Service to call your uncle in Palo Alto to ask if he is still alive. Yoonjae's voice was gentle but carried the weight of steel. They have made a demand, haven't they? Jinho was silent for a long moment, then deflated. Not a demand, a taunt to my associate. He nodded towards Lena. Yoonjae looked at Lena, her expression unreadable. They are testing your resolve and his. She turned back to her son. Your father feared them. His brother, my brother-in-law Seung Hyun, did not fear them. He admired them. He sought their patronage after his exile. We believed he failed. It seems we were wrong. The story she told was one of old, bitter shame. Seung Hyun, the brilliant, reckless younger brother, had tried to sell Koryo Cyber's early encryption prototypes to a consortium in Beijing. Jinho's father discovered it, confronted him, and was met not with remorse but with a boast. You build cages, brother, I sell keys. Which is more powerful? The confrontation turned physical. Seung Hyun was disowned, stripped of his shares, and cast out with a settlement meant to silence him. He vanished to America, and a year later, a death certificate arrived from California. Car accident. No body was ever repatriated. Your father always doubted it, Yoonjae whispered. He said Seung Hyun would only die if it was useful to him. The Jiayang specialize in useful deaths. The puzzle pieces snapped together with a sickening clarity. The long game, the fake death, the years of silence building influence, perhaps within the very Jungian group that was now making a hostile move. The Jiayang weren't just hired by the uncle. The uncle had become one of them or their client. This was a 50-year-old blood feud reaching its climax. What do they want ultimately? Lena asked. Yoonjae's eyes glistened. What they always wanted, the company, but not to own it, to break it open, to prove my husband was a fool for building walls. Seung Hyun wants the world to see every secret this company ever guarded. It is not business, it is revenge. And you, she looked at Lena with a profound sadness. You are an obstacle he did not anticipate. A woman of action in a house of planners. That makes you the primary target, not my son. You. The weight of it settled on Lena. She was the anomaly in the Jiayang's flawless equation. Their next move wouldn't be another direct assault. It would be a surgical strike to remove her, to discredit her, or worse. 2 days after Yoonjae's arrival, the surgical strike began, not with bullets but with pixels. A Korean tabloid known for pay-for-play scandals published an explosive story. Billionaire's black chef, mercenary or mistress. It featured grainy, long-lens photos of Lena and Jinho talking in the garden, their body language misconstrued. It detailed her army background, labeling her a foreign mercenary. It hinted, without evidence, that the robbery was a staged event to cement her position and manipulate the vulnerable billionaire. The article was a poison pill, designed to undermine her legally, morally, and publicly. The effect was instantaneous. The police, who had closed the case, reopened it, focusing now on Lena. Immigration authorities flagged her visa for review. The story was picked up by international gossip blogs. The narrative was being written for her, the scheming foreign woman, using violence to entrap a wealthy man. Jinho was furious. He issued denials, threatened lawsuits, but the damage was done. The public lens was now on them, distorting everything. Park argued that Lena should be placed on leave for the family's image. Min Jae, for once, agreed silently. It was Yoon Jae who cut through the noise. They are using your rules against you, son. Public perception, legal standing. They want you to dismiss her, to isolate her. Then she is easy to pluck. You must not play their game. You must change the game. Lena, however, was already 2 steps ahead. While Jinho fought the public battle, she dove back into the digital dirt. The tabloid story had a byline, a reporter known for taking anonymous tips. She traced the timing of the article's submission. It was filed just 12 hours after the Jiayang's email to her. This was a coordinated 1-2 punch. Intimidate her personally, then destroy her publicly. She asked Jinho for one thing, access to the metadata of the compound's internet traffic from the night of the email. The email came to me asterisk, she reasoned. But to send it, they needed to know it worked. They needed to confirm delivery or at least monitor for a reaction. That means they have a live data tap, not just a backdoor, a mirror. They are watching our digital reactions in real time. Jinho's best cybersecurity people, working remotely from a secure facility, found it. A nearly undetectable packet sniffer embedded deep within the router's firmware, installed during the climate-controlled diagnostic. It wasn't just logging data. It was transmitting a compressed stream of all internal communications to a relay server in Taiwan. This was the gold mine. The Jiayang were watching, so Lena proposed they should give them a show. She crafted a fake internal memo from Jinho to his legal team. It stated that due to the scandal, Lena Wright would be discreetly relocated to a safe house outside Seoul in 48 hours, pending her deportation hearing. The memo included a fake convoy route and time. They fed this memo into the system, watching as the sniffer dutifully packaged and sent it out into the night. They will intercept the convoy, Park said, understanding the plan. It's their chance to take her cleanly off the compound. No, Lena corrected. It's our chance to take asterisk them. The plan was high risk. Lena would be in the decoy vehicle. A team of Jinho's most trusted men, not from the compound staff but from an outside firm he secretly owned, would be shadowing. They would apprehend the attackers and hopefully trace them back up the chain. The night of the move was moonless and cold. Lena sat in the back of an armored sedan, wearing a bulletproof vest over her chef's coat, a final statement of defiance. The convoy, 2 cars, wound its way through the secondary roads toward the supposed safe house in Gapyeong. They were 20 minutes into the journey, on a deserted stretch of road flanked by dense forest, when the attack came. It was not a roadblock. It was a precision EMP pulse from the tree line, a localized blast that killed the engines and electronics of both cars instantly. The vehicles coasted to a silent halt. Then, figures emerged from the woods, sleek and silent in night vision goggles. But Lena's team was ready for this. They were driving older, hardened vehicles with shielded electronics. The EMP knocked out communications but not the engines. As the Jiayang assault team closed in, the doors of the trailing car burst open. Jinho's external team engaged. A fierce, close-quarters firefight erupted in the dark. Lena stayed low in her car, her hand on a pistol she prayed she wouldn't have to use. Through the window, she saw flashes of muzzle fire, heard shouts in Korean. It was over in 90 seconds. 3 attackers were down. 2 of Jinho's men were wounded. The rest of the Jiayang team melted back into the forest. They had captured one alive. A young man, his jaw set in defiance. He was searched. No identification. But on his person they found something far more interesting, a high-frequency encrypted communicator, and it was still receiving. Jinho's tech expert on the line via a backup satellite phone gave urgent instructions. The communicator is live. It's receiving GPS coordinates. They are tracking him. They know he's been compromised. The signal is two-way. If we can keep him talking, we can triangulate the source. It was Lena who approached the captive. She knelt in front of him, ignoring the gun trained on his head. She spoke in English. They're listening right now. They know you're caught. Their protocol will be to cut the link and abandon you, or worse, trigger a kill switch in that device. Your only value to them is silence. Your only value to us is your voice." The man spat at her feet. Lena didn't flinch. She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper only he could hear. "I was in that kitchen. I killed the men who came through my door. I am not a lawyer. I am not the police. I am the variable. And I am offering you a choice your employers never will. Live in a Korean prison where we can protect you from them. Or die here in this ditch, a disposable tool for a man who faked his own death and doesn't care about yours." Something flickered in the man's eyes. Not fear, but a cold calculation. He knew she was right. He spoke a single word into the communicator's mic, a code word. Then he looked at Lena. "The signal source is mobile, a van. It was following, 2 kilometers back on the southern route. They will be running now." It was enough. Jin-ho's team scrambled, converging on the southern route. They found the van abandoned, engine warm, a sophisticated relay station inside still humming. The birds had flown, but they left behind the nest. And in the nest, forensics found a treasure trove: maps, schedules, and a dedicated, hardened laptop. When they cracked the laptop, they didn't find leads to the uncle. They found something more immediate: a detailed, real-time feed of the Kang compound security. Not just the cameras they knew about. A feed from a camera they didn't. A tiny, pinhole lens embedded in the frame of the painting in Jin-ho's own study. It had been there for months. The betrayal was not from a staffer with a sick sister. It was from the one person whose access was total, unquestioned, and who had processed the work order for the climate control company. Min Jae. And as they watched in horror, the live feed from the study showed Min Jae calmly walking in, going to the bookshelf and removing a thick volume. She pressed something inside. A hidden panel in the shelf swung open, revealing a small safe. She began to dial the combination. She was not stealing, she was planting. And in that moment, the entire game changed once more. This was no longer about kidnapping or assassination. This was about framing Jin-ho for a crime so heinous it would destroy him forever. The Jae-yang's final move was not to kill him, but to make the world bury him. In the chill of the surveillance van, the live feed was a silent scream. They watched Min Jae, her face a mask of focused calm, place a small, sealed data drive into the hidden safe. She closed the panel, replaced the book, and smoothed her jacket. She was not a fleeing traitor. She was an architect completing her blueprint. Jin-ho's voice was a ragged wire. She has been the source, for years, every leak, every breach, the climate technician, the tabloid story, all of it. The magnitude of the betrayal was a physical blow. 10 years of trust evaporated in 30 seconds of video. Lena's mind raced ahead of the horror. She's not done. Planting evidence is step 1. Step 2 is triggering its discovery. The police will get an anonymous tip. They'll find that drive. Whatever's on it will end you. "We go back now," Jin-ho said, already moving toward the van's door. "No," Lena countered, her hand on his arm. "We're 2 hours away. She'll be gone by then and the tip will already be sent. We need to control the discovery. We need to be the ones who find it first." She turned to the captured Jae-yang operative, still under guard. "The safe, what's the combination?" The man shook his head, a faint smirk on his lips. Lena didn't hesitate. She grabbed the encrypted communicator from the tech table. "Then we use their own system. We send her a new order." She looked at Jin-ho. "You have to mimic their command voice. Tell her the plan is accelerated. Tell her to retrieve the drive and bring it to a new location for verification. We intercept her there." It was a desperate gamble. If Min Jae suspected a ruse, she would vanish and trigger the police tip immediately. Jin-ho's tech expert worked frantically to clone the command signal's digital signature. They had one shot. The message was sent. "Asset retrieval required. Primary package for field verification. Coordinates follow. Acknowledge." A tense minute passed. Then on the live feed, Min Jae paused, checked a secure phone only she should possess. She typed a brief reply. The laptop in the van displayed the incoming text, acknowledged, en route. She was walking into the trap. Jinho coordinated with Park remotely, his voice stripped of all emotion. Minjai is the asset. She is leaving the compound with contraband. You will detain her. Use no violence. Isolate her. I am returning. Park's response was a stunned silence, then a hard, understood. His pride had been gutted. His redemption lay in the capture. Lena and Jinho sped back towards Seoul in a separate car, the city lights a blur. They arrived as dawn was breaking. In the compound's secure holding room, Minjai sat at a bare table. The sealed data drive lay between her and Park. She showed no fear, only a weary resignation. Jinho entered, Lena a step behind. The room felt colder. Why? The single word carried the weight of a decade. Minjai looked up. Her usual severity was gone, replaced by a profound emptiness. They had my daughter. You didn't even know I had a daughter, did you? She lives in Vancouver. She was diagnosed with a rare cardiomyopathy 5 years ago. The treatment's experimental, not covered. $1 million a year. You pay me well, Jinho, but not that well. Her voice was flat, rehearsed. The Jiayang approached me. They offered to cover everything. In return, access, information. I was a drip feed for years. Small things. Then 6 months ago, they demanded more. The full network schematic, your biometric schedules. The price of my daughter's life went up. You could have come to me, Jinho said, pain cracking his voice. And say what? That I had already betrayed you for 3 years. You are a man of black and white. You would have had me arrested. My daughter would have died. There was no path back. She gestured to the drive. This was my final task. Plant this. Once the police found it, my debt would be cleared. My daughter would receive a final payment enough for a lifetime of care. What is on it? Lena asked. Proof that Jinho Kang has been laundering money for North Korean front companies via Koryo Cyber's encrypted channels. Fabricated financial trails, forged correspondence, deepfake audio of him authorizing transfers. Enough evidence for the National Intelligence Service to seize the company and imprison him for life. The Jiayang don't just want you ruined, Jinho. They want you to be a traitor. They want your father's name erased from history. The scope of the hatred was breathtaking. And my uncle, Jinho asked. He is their client, but he is not their master. He is a bitter old man living in a guarded estate in Napa Valley, providing direction and funding. The Jiayang execute. They considered the kidnapping, the assassination. This is cleaner. This is forever. Jinho picked up the data drive. You will help us dismantle this. Minjai laughed, a dry, hollow sound. How? By testifying. They will kill my daughter the moment I appear in a courtroom. No, Lena interjected. Not by testifying, by continuing your role. You will tell them the package was planted successfully, that the police tip has been sent, but we will control when it is sent and what the police find. The plan that formed was audacious. They would use the Jiayang's own weapon against them. With Minjai's coerced cooperation, they fed the Jiayang confirmation that the frame was in place. Jinho's legal and tech teams worked around the clock. They created a mirror of the damning drive, but on this version, the forensic metadata would tell a different story. It would show the files were created on a server tied to the Jiayang's own abandoned van, and planted on a specific date after Minjai's communication about the task. They would not prevent the police raid. They would welcome it. 3 days later, the tip came. A team from the Korean National Police's Cyber Crimes Unit, accompanied by intelligence agents, arrived at the compound with a search warrant. Jinho surrendered his devices calmly. He led them to the study, to the painting. He showed them the hidden safe, which he claimed to have just discovered. The data drive was inside. The agents took it, their faces grim. But the forensic analysis conducted with Jinho's lawyers present revealed the planted metadata. The digital trail led back inexorably to the Jiayang van, to the communication logs showing Minjai's instructions. It was a frame-up, and a clumsy one. The scandal flipped. The narrative in the press became Billionaire framed in elaborate corporate espionage plot. The Jiayang, not Jinho, were now the subjects of an international manhunt. Interpol alerts were issued for the uncle, Seung Hyun, based on the financial trails uncovered from the van's laptop. Min Jae, under a negotiated immunity agreement, provided everything she knew. Her daughter was extracted from Vancouver by a private security team paid for by Jinho and relocated under a new identity. Min Jae herself entered witness protection, her debt transferred from one master to another. The internal cancer was cut out. Park resigned, his honor shattered, though Jinho refused to accept it. You were deceived by a master. We all were. Your job is not to be perfect. It is to be loyal. Stay and help me rebuild. Park stayed. And Lena, the immigration charges were dropped. The tabloid stories were retracted. Her visa was not just renewed. She was granted a special residency permit as a material witness and key contributor to a national security investigation. One evening, a week after the police raid, the compound was quiet. The forensic tape was gone. The kitchen was restored, though the window above the stove was still being replaced. Lena stood at the island, seasoning a batch of cowbie marinade. The smell of garlic and pear filled the air. Jinho walked in. He no longer looked frozen in shock. He looked tired but present. He took a seat at the island, watching her. "My mother returns to Jeju tomorrow," he said. "She told me before she leaves she wants your jollof rice. She says a woman who can fight for a family should also feed it." Lena smiled, stirring the marinade. "I can do that." "She also said I am a fool if I let you just be the chef." Lena looked up. "What else would I be?" He was silent for a long moment. "When the police were here, when they took the drive, I realized something. For 3 years since my father died, I have been building walls. Higher walls, thicker walls, smarter walls, but the threat was already inside. The wall I needed wasn't around the property. It was standing in my kitchen, holding a knife." He met her gaze. "I don't want a director of security. I don't want an employee. The contract is void." Lena's hand stilled. "What are you saying?" "I am saying the compound is not a home. It is a fortress. I am tired of living in a fortress. I am selling it. The company, I am stepping down as CEO, taking the role of chairman. The day-to-day will be handled by a board I can finally trust. I am going to build something smaller, something that has a front door, not a security checkpoint, and I would like you to design the kitchen." The offer hung in the air, immense and delicate. "That's a very big job offer," Lena said softly. "It is not a job offer," Jinho replied, his voice just above a whisper. "It is an invitation to build something new with me." He didn't reach for her hand. He simply waited, the distance between them on the marble counter finally meaning nothing at all. From the hallway, clear and carrying, came Yoonjae's voice. "It's about time. And Lena, the rice better be spicy." Lena laughed, the sound bright and alive in the quiet room. Jinho almost smiled, a real one this time, reaching across the counter not for the spoon, but finally for her hand. The sound of an old woman's voice carrying through a hollow mansion was the sound of a fortress beginning to become a home. In the end, Lena Wright came to Seoul with a suitcase and a set of knives. She took a job to cook for a ghost in a glass house. She learned the rhythms of a man who had forgotten his own. And when 3 assassins came through the door she said was weak, she used her tools not just to defend a billionaire, but to defend the man he had hidden underneath. Some people wait for permission to change their lives. Lena picked up a skillet and created a new one. The final surprise wasn't in a data drive or a hidden safe. It was on her visa, stamped the following month. Under purpose of stay, it no longer said employment. It said family. So what is the true story here? Is it a tale of corporate espionage, of a 50-year blood feud finally settled? A viral thumbnail about a billionaire frozen in shock? In a way, yes. But at its core, it is a story about 2 people who were masters of their own separate silences, and the violent, beautiful accident that forced them to speak. Jinho Kang was a man who believed security was something you built out of code and concrete. Lena Wright was a woman who believed sustenance was something you built out of skill and patience. They were both wrong and both right. The real security was not in the wall, but in the willingness to stand at the breach. The real sustenance was not in the perfect meal, but in the shared act of creating something together after everything has been broken. The Jiayang were not defeated by a superior firewall or a more ruthless strike team. They were defeated by a variable their cold calculus could not accommodate, human loyalty forged in a moment of unscripted courage. They understood the price of everything, but the value of nothing. They knew the cost of a life, a secret, a betrayal. But they had no metric for the worth of a woman who would defend a kitchen that wasn't technically hers, for a man who would tear down his own fortress to build a home. Today, the compound in Xiangbukdong sits empty, a modernist ghost awaiting a new owner. Jinho and Lena are designing a house in the countryside, with a kitchen that has a door leading straight to a herb garden and no security cameras pointing at the dining table. Yoonjae visits often, her critique of the jollof rice growing more detailed and affectionate with each Tuesday. The company, under new leadership, has weathered the storm, its integrity restored. And the uncle, Seung Hyun Kang, was found by Interpol in his Napa Valley estate, a bitter old man surrounded by screens showing his lost empire. His extradition is pending. His revenge died not with a bang, but with the quiet click of a safe being opened by the wrong person. The world is full of stories about powerful men and the people who protect them. This is not that story. This is a story about a protector who was seen, truly seen, by the man she protected. And in that exchange of glances across a marble floor littered with broken glass, a new story began. One where the strongest defense is not a weapon but a connection. Where the most dangerous thing you can do is not to fight, but to choose to stay. We are drawn to these tales of inversion, the maid who speaks truth to power, the chef who becomes a shield, because they tap into a deep hope that within the rigid structures of our world there is room for the unexpected hero. That sometimes the person who saves you isn't wearing a uniform, they're wearing an apron. If you found this story of unexpected courage and transformative loyalty compelling, then you know the channel is where ordinary roles are shattered to reveal extraordinary people. Consider subscribing. Your support allows us to keep unearthing these hidden tales, one gripping narrative at a time. Thank you for watching.